and then just turned into a fucking heroin junkie overnight. And I almost lost my arm when I got out. She's like, we all agree that you have some of the worst trauma we've ever seen. Flat out said that it's above their pay grades.
Welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast. I am your host, Wade Mulhauser. I am super excited to have a newer friend and relationship, somebody I've actually admired for a while from afar. And it's really cool to, have these experiences where you get into recovery, you're seeing people that you idolize from Instagram or videos they have out, or you've watched a podcast or two. And then as you keep going and doing the right thing, these people actually come into your circle and come into your life. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of recovery and the redemption process is good people surround themselves with good people and they find good people. Without further ado, Peter.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being out here, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And likewise on all that stuff too, bro. Like I said, we just kind of met, but I've known who you are. I'm a fan of anybody that's doing the right thing like you are. And, when the first time we talked in person, what was it, a month or so ago, and I heard they were saying your story about how, like, I don't remember, you were trying to get someone to invest in you or something like that. And you're like, they said no. And you're like, I'll figure it out myself. And I was like, I love that because I would say the same type of shit, So pleasure, bro. And like I said, we'll get into it, bro, but I've turned down 10, 20 podcasts lately, and this will be the first one I've done in a long time. And I'm only doing it for people like you that have the right message and are actually good people beyond like just the fame and clout and stuff like that. So
that means the world to me. And it's all about who we can help through this. And I know that's what you do with your podcast. So getting kind of into it, right? Let's talk about your journey into sobriety. I know we briefly discussed that, but it wasn't a clean-cut childhood to it,
I have goosebumps head to toe already just hearing it. Yeah, just, life's about perspective, bro. And so sometimes, like, I always tell addicts the number one disservice you can do is figure where you come from. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's so important for me to still go to meetings, even though I don't hit them as often as I should. But, like, you got to remember where you come from, because life can get so good you forget that you're still an addict. And you forget you still got to humble yourself and, do the right thing. And just like what we talked about off air, you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought I had beat this disease, and you always got to keep that fresh in your mind. So I'll give you a little backstory and then we can tap in wherever you want. But yeah, I honestly just made peace with my brother, my dad again. And my dad, here's the thing. Before I say this, if they hear this, I never want to talk shit about my family, but I'm real as hell about everything. You know what I'm saying? And me and my brother beef about this too, because his childhood is completely different than mine was. Okay. And he has completely different memories than I have. But I'm like, I don't care how you remember your childhood. I know what I went through and how it was for me growing up, And, but dude, childhood up until I was 10, 11 years old was great. Like, my dad was a full-on addict, drug addict, but he was a great dad. Like, did I know that he was tweaking out in the garage and, drinking all day? I didn't know that, but he was there. He coached me in sports. Like, we lived in a cul-de-sac. Zero complaints up until then. It wasn't until my mom left him. And the story is when I was like 10 or 11 years old and she woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to my dad butt naked, organizing her nail polishes and cleaning them off by like alphabetical or like color order, something like that. And she was just like, this is it. I've had it, And then it's funny, I think back now, because he was always in the garage just tinkering with shit. And I'm like, God, he was just tweaked out and messed with all his tools and screws and stuff like that, But then, my dad, and not to jump the surface, but God kind of showed me this recently when I was actually in treatment when I got like that trauma help. But I was like kind of hard on my dad after that, And he went and got himself, he kind of somewhat disappeared for a couple of years. And it wasn't until recently I found this out, he was like, and I give him props now because AA wasn't cool back then like it is now. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of cool people there. It's really easy to find meetings and you can find a circle. Back then, before the internet was around, like how do you even find an AA meeting and like go turn your life around? You know what I'm saying? Especially when no one's done it before that So I give up my dad all the props in the world for that now, but I never did that until recently. And he told me this story just recently that, he found some chick at an AA meeting and then was staying on her couch with her in her mom's house in like downtown Phoenix. I remember I went to this house one time and I never knew whose house it was. And then my dad, started getting sober and, got his life together, but I was living with my mom because I kind of, like I needed supervision. I didn't have it. So like just during that time, I started staying with my mom, who's like as much of an enabler as you can possibly be. My mom's like, we're best friends. She's the sweetest lady on earth, but she's the biggest enabler on the face of the earth, And like, even when I was a kid, like I made the rules, she didn't make the rules, and started ditching school, smoking weed in middle school, right after my parents split. My mom was a flight attendant, so she was home 2-3 nights a week. The other nights I'm home alone. So if I don't want to go to school, I'm not going to school. And I was like a stud athlete. And then by the time I got to middle school, I never even played. That's like the biggest regret I have in life is I never even played a middle school baseball game, never high school. I didn't make it through semester of high school. And like with my whole life, that's the only regret I have, is that I never like stuck it out enough to even play sports, And, we were on like traveling baseball teams before then, but started smoking weed and just gave everything up for that. And so my dad ended up getting his life together. And then he bought a house down in Chandler, like a mile from my mom. And my brother, this is where it's kind of different. My brother and my dad were always like this, so he went and lived with him and I stayed with my mom. And I don't remember really well. And I think a lot of it, I was kind of mad at my dad and I just kind of took my mom's side over things. And then freshman year of high school is kind of when everything changed for me. So I was like, the most popular kid in school. Everybody likes the troublemaker that can fight and wants to fight for your friends and all that stuff. So I was that dude. And then freshman year, I had so my best friend, I ended up going to prison for 12 years for robbing this dude's house, but we were best friends growing up. And he kind of asked me to take one for the team because my mom's house was the party house. She was always out of town on the weekends. That's how I got in with all the seniors. Like my house was the party house. And he kind of asked me to take one for the team and hook up with this chick, Ashley Chance. And he wanted to hook up with Lindsay Howard. And her own brother, like we're doing your kids, sneak out of the bedroom window. He dropped them off with a big-ass bottle of Jack Daniels. We polished off this half a bottle of Jack Daniels the first night. I lose my virginity that night. He loses his virginity that night. Lindsay the same, and Ashley Chance was one of those girls that like had sex in like 7th grade or something like that, right? One of those girls. They sneak back like 4 or 5 in the morning. Everything's fine. Saturday night, we do the exact same thing. Polish off the second half of this Jack Daniels now. And dude, I still remember this like it was yesterday. I remember that Sunday I hit him up to hang out. And they were just like being weird. Like Lindsay was like saying, she's like, I'm mad at you, but like wouldn't tell me why. And I was like, and no joke, I was like, you bitches are whack. Bye then, And by the time I get home to my mom's house Sunday night, she's on the phone with Ashley Chance's parents. And the first words I hear out of my mom's mouth is like, there's no way my son raped your daughter. And I was like, what? And I was like, hang up the phone. Who is that? And she's like, that's Ashley's parents. And I'm like, where did this come from? And cops showed my house. And I never got charged with anything because she refused to take a lie detector test. She did like one of those rape kits on her, and it saw that she had sex, but nothing was forced because nothing was damaged in there. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I think we had sex for 20 seconds. Like I had no idea, but she went bragging about it to school. And I go from like being the most popular kid in school to like that Monday they had, and this is what like my wife can't wrap her mind around now. She's like, because that Monday they called my parents into school and pretty much told them like, we don't know what to do, but your son's not safe here. So they let me drop out of school. And then I just turned in full on druggy mode and start hanging out with all the dudes that are already out of school. And that's when I get an experience with crystal meth, smoke crack, did ecstasy and everything that first weekend, first time I've ever even seen those drugs. And I did it all that weekend. And like, this was just like, the next Monday comes around and these dudes don't go to school. I don't go to school now. And like, this is just what we do now every day. And had no money. So then you just start stealing shit, and like, it's so pathetic saying that. But like, we used to go to this Walmart right there on Elliott and Priest every night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and just jack whatever we could. And I'm like, every time I drive by the Walmart, I'm like, how did they let us go in there every night, never spend $1, but knew we weren't just stealing stuff, But that's how we would do it. I'm not joking, like lawnmowers from the gardening section, wheeling them down Elliott Road right there, and just taking anything to our dope deal that was on the south side right there. And then I should be a senior in high school. This is spring break. And we're at my mom's house now. And instead of like it being like the parties where like everybody's there from high school, now it's just like I'm locked in my room. We're doing math. My brother and his friends are out there drinking and having fun. And one of his, so they'd all burglarized, and it was the Nelson's house in Ahwatukee. It was the biggest house in Ahwatukee.
Okay.
Like 15,000 square feet, full-on mansion. And it's my best friend who I was with that night. Because if he says what happened, this all goes away. But he's like, I'm not getting involved in this.
Wow.
And which is why I talk to a lot of kids now. Like, they're so loyal to their friends, and their friends aren't loyal to them and behind.
Yeah.
Who you should be loyal to is your mom and your dad and stuff like that. Because if you do go down, like, they're going to be the ones visiting you and sending you money, not your friends, None of my friends did shit. I went away to prison for 12 years. And so my brother and his friends are telling me they had just burglarized the Nelson's house. They were in Hawaii for spring break. And I'm like, where are they at? They're like, they're in Hawaii. I'm like, are they still there? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so then we wait till my brother and them like pass out drunk that night. And then me and my friends go back. The house is already burglarized by 5 kids. I literally took a drill, because you need that when you're tweaking.
Yeah.
A snowboard, Jordan basketball shorts, and Jordan sandals, because I was like a diehard Michael Jordan fan, but I could never afford anything Jordan. And of course, they got spotted there during the day. So once they get questioned, everybody says that I had done it, and I think I'm like this little badass kid because I just stole a Mercedes-Benz from the Mercedes-Benz dealership right here back when Gone in 60 Seconds came out. So they said those cars are unstealable, and I was like, I'll show you I can steal. This is one of those nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, just driving and looking for shit to jack. And I see they kept the lockbox on the windows at night. I had just learned out what bolt cutters were. I'd never even seen bolts before. So I literally went there, snipped the thing off with bolt cutters, and then take the lockbox to that Mormon church right across from Mount Point High School, slam this lockbox on the floor like 6 times over, and a brand new Mercedes-Benz key pops out. And no joking, I take the big swinging fence that closed the dealership off. I took the bolt cutters back there, and I chopped the chain with the bolt cutters, opened the thing up, and drove the brand new Mercedes-Benz off. And I'd gotten probation for that. So I got 90 days jail and probation. I just turned 18. So even then, I'm like, I just robbed a Mercedes. And I'm like, I went to jail for 90 days. So then it's like, then also like the fear of going to jail is gone for me because now I've been to jail and it sucks, but it's not the worst thing on earth and I can survive. And then we do this burglary. Now I'm like, now I know not snitching is a thing too because I was not raised on the streets, And I'm like, so when the cops come and interrogate me for this thing, I'm like, fuck you, eat a dick. I don't know what you're talking about. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
And they tell me they're going to make an example out of me. And they did exactly that, bro. And I got 12 years in prison for a non-dangerous burglary charge when I was an 18-year-old kid. 6 foot, 144 pounds. And so I went to prison I fought my case for almost 20 months in the county jail. And I remember the judge's words like it was yesterday. So I had Judge Brian Ishikawa, and after I got sentenced, they ended up banning him from being a judge because they said it was too harsh on his sentences. He was giving all these kids excessive sentences, but they didn't resentence me. And I remember his words were this. He said, I find it mitigated for the fact that you were 18 years at the time you committed this crime. He goes, I also find it mitigated, which mitigated means that you're supposed to get a minimum sentence. I also find it mitigated for the fact that I think you have a drug problem, not a thieving problem. He goes, but I also find it aggravated for the amount of jewelry that was stolen. And my friends stole the jewelry. I never made it in the house. And of course, my friends that stole the jewelry that I'm loyal to and not snitching on, what do? They tell the cops it was me and tell them where all the jewelry is. So they pinned me for everything. And his next words were, so I think, and he said, I think. He goes, I think this calls for an aggravated sentence of 12 years. And right then I was just like, I touched him, did he say 12 years? And I was like, oh my God, my life's over. And I had such like a young mindset back then. Like all I remember was when I was a kid is like, I just want to turn 18 so bad. I feel like it takes forever to turn 18. And I'm like thinking that's 2/3 that whole time I have to go do in prison now if I survive and make it out or don't catch time, And that's when I had to like grow up overnight. And I remember then go back to the pod and just bawling my eyes out. And I'm on the phone with my brother and he's just like, I'm going to visit you every weekend. I've still got emotional talking about it, and it's just like the movies, and they tell you to roll up. Now you go into the higher security jails because you're a prison dude now, and then take you to DOC Alhambra. And I remember going on the bus, and I went to Tucson Complex first. And all I knew about prison was like what I saw in the movies and TV, And Tucson's a huge complex, so there's like 8 different yards there. It's like one big perimeter fence around it, and there's 8 individual yards inside there. And I remember we pull up, and like right as we get through the gate, and just like you see dudes with shotguns on the thing, you're completely shackled up while you're driving. And I remember right as we pull in, I see dudes like playing basketball and softball over here. And I was like, all right, I can do this, like whatever. If I have to play basketball or softball or something for 12 years, that doesn't seem like the worst, And then we drop everybody off here. And of course, I'm the last yard to get out. And by the time we get to my yard, there's no one on the yard. And the yard's a quarter the size. There's no softball there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I remember right then I get on the yard and we go to, they call it dinner, but chow, anytime you eat in the chow hall. And I remember going to chow that night. And I came from being like the most popular kid. And then I remember I had dinner and I looked out and I walked outside the chow and I'm like, looking around, I'm like, how am I going to do this? The yard was probably 4 of these buildings. Like that's how small it was, just a little circle, just buildings all around it. And my thought right then was like, how am I going to do 12 years like with like being like a lane that no one knows? I'm like some little pretty boy kid, like nothing. I look nothing like the dudes on this yard, And I had like long blonde hair. Was literally by this time I was like 160 pounds, but still barely hit puberty. I barely had armpit hair. I was a little kid, And then I remember them hearing about heart checks, And one thing about me is I'm like really good at like reading vibes and reading people's body language, stuff like that. I could tell no one there like respected me at all, And they probably thought I was going to check in, like request protective segregation or something. And I remember this OG dude that lived right next to me. We didn't get along because I like rap music, and that's not a thing in there. You're not allowed to, And I was a little gangster-ass kid. And he tried to like punk me in front of this dude, and I beat the shit out of this dude. And we get locked down for that night. And then the next morning, we come out to chow. And now like all these OGs that I used to see on the yard working out, like they're waiting out there to shake my hand and talk to me, And then that's how quick you get recruited into politics, And the next yard I hit was cooking, which is now like a sex offender yard. And then, but the attention was addicting back then, And if you're gonna like this, I'm like, if I'm gonna be in there for half my life minimum, like, of course I'm gonna at least try to make a name for myself, And I honestly did it for like safety in the beginning, Like you have a choice, but you don't really have a choice. You could be some lane that no one's gonna talk to, or you can get involved in politics. And so I started just taking my anger out on people in there, you know what I mean, and just smashing dudes. And then by the time I was 23 years old, I was on a 4-yard now and running the 4-yard. Like the youngest dude in the state running a 4-yard. Luckily I hit puberty, so I'm like 220 pounds. And every year I was just getting angrier and angrier, And every dude I was, whose ass I whooped, I felt that much tougher, And at this time I was in a relationship with a corrections officer. I pulled a property officer on the yard, which like went statewide. So I started getting like a lot of notoriety from that, and met some real like Aryan Brotherhood members on this yard, and saw full on murders and but I never did hard drugs. What's crazy is because heroin's meth is, everyone has meth in there, but it's like, not everybody, but like everybody has heroin in there. So like when you're on a 4, there's 100 dudes per side of the building. I'm not joking, 96 to 98 of those guys all shoot heroin. That's how much it's in there. And I never even seen heroin before on the streets. You know, that wasn't like my drug. I was
Yeah.
just, you know, I like to be up all night, like doing shit. Like heroin's not, but it's a prison drug, you know. And they had told me when I get to county jail, they're asking about heroin, and I'm like, no, I don't do that shit. I've never even seen that shit. And they're like, oh, just wait till you go to prison. And I'm like, well, whatever. That's not my kind of drug, you know. And I'd also heard stories, and I didn't use needles back then. I don't know if you've ever snorted heroin, but it tastes like shit. Horrible, right? And I'd also heard stories from guys that had said they hated heroin the first 5-10 times, and then one day they just loved it.
Yep.
So I had done it a few times just when and by this time I'm in the relationship with this corrections officer. So like I have this sack, like ounces of heroin, ounces of chronic, like no joke. We were drinking promethazine with syrup on a 4-yard, 23 years old, had a threesome with 2 corrections officers and the lieutenant, and they're watching. Like I had it like that. And then I call him my prison pops. He would always ask me like, yo, let's do a cap. A cap means you're going to snort some heroin. He would shoot it, but he wanted me to do that so then he could I'd break out the stash and he'd get high for free, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd cave in here and there, you know? And then I remember telling him this verbatim. I was like, bro, Scotty, I've heard the stories, but I don't like heroin. I don't want to start liking this one day. You know what I'm saying? And just like that, I come home from work one day. It was probably 2 days after that. I remember this like it was yesterday. And I'm running my people. The Mexican dude that lives in my same building is running the Mexicans. And we're like 2 of the only guys that don't shoot heroin in this whole pod. And I come home from work I was working on the property, so I was with the property officer. So I was like with her, like it was like I had a phone relationship in prison for like 9 months. And I come home from work one day and this dude is high as hell. I can see it. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you, you know? And he pulls out a handful of needles. I was like, what are you doing with those? And he's like, I just slammed heroin. I was like, shut up. Because this dude was like anti that, you know? And he's like, I swear, homie. And I was like, what's up with it? He's like, it's fucking bomb. And I'm like, shut up. He's like, yeah. I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah. And I'm taking this dude's word because he doesn't seem like a drug addict like all these other guys do. He's like, just stay home from chow when they go to dinner right now. He's like, I'll have my celly hit you. He's like, it's a brand new needle, no one's used this. And I was just like that. I was like, all right. And I remember, I didn't know anything. He's like, give me your arm, this and that, you know, and like, give him my arm, just whatever. And I remember, you know how it is, bro. You shoot that shot, you get that warm feeling. I was like, oh, my first thought was I could do time like this now. And did not do it for a day until I went to the hole from there for being in that relationship with the corrections officer. And that's the first time I experienced dope sickness. And I'm in the hole, I'm like, you are joking. This is a thing. And I'm like throwing up, shitting on myself, like can't sleep for 2 weeks, like dying. And I'm like, how the hell do you guys keep going through this shit, you know? And it wasn't until like I didn't realize how bad of a heroin addict I had become like overnight, you know? And of course I'm in the hole, like once I finally know, I'm like, I'm not touching that shit no more, you know? But then the second you go through the yard now, I'm just like, one little bad day, or you know, you see someone getting heroin, like, all right, I'm gonna go get high, so I don't have to do time today. You know, that was kind of your mindset. And then just turned into a fucking heroin junkie overnight, bro, in there, you know. And I almost lost my arm when I got out. They had to cut my arm open like a year before I got out. And I of course right then I'm like, once I get out of this hospital, I'm not touching heroin again, you know. And there it's not like the hospital visits you see. Like took me to St. Luke's. They deadbolt the door closed, chained you to the bed, no Bible, no TV, no nothing. I was in there for 6 days. And I had such a tolerance for heroin. They give you like morphine at first, and then they gave me 4 times the normal morphine, and then 10 times. And then once you go to that, you go to like Dilaudid or something like that. Yep. And then they were giving me 10 times Dilaudid. And I'm telling this dude, my legs are still kicking. Like I have such a bad heroin habit. Like I'm still sick almost, you know, like the only time I'm okay is like right when they give me my shot. But then after an hour or two, I'm like already withdrawing. And I remember the nurse telling me like, we're giving you so much, like you could literally kill an entire family. Like by law, we can't give you any more than we're giving you right now. And I'm like, dude, this is brutal. You know, stayed there chained to the bed for 6 days. They had to cut my arm open. My arm was swollen like this. They had to cut my arm open. And then, of course, when I get back, I'm like, all right, I'm done with that heroin shit this time, you know? And I actually had some Suboxone in my mail that was just waiting until, you know, whatever, if I went to the hole to kick and get off heroin again. But I'm like, I'm done. I remember when I get back to Complex Medical, the doctor says so casually too, he's like, wow, he's like, you kept it. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, your arm. He's like, I thought for sure you're going to lose that arm. And I'm like, you thought I was going to lose my arm? He's like, oh yeah, for sure. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, so mad at myself now that I want to go get high to not think about what I just did, you know? And I'm done with drugs. The second I go right back to my run, I get high that night. And then, you know, it wasn't until God saved my life, man, with this. And I didn't even believe in God back then, but I was in, you know, I went away for calling a shot for these when they tried to kill these dude, kill this dude on the yard. And luckily God saved this dude's life, but they knew I was running shit, and these dudes like slit this dude's throat, stabbed his eyes out. And I went to the hole there and weighing 178 pounds, and I sat there for my last 11 months. But that was luckily I was able to get away from all the politics, get away from all the bullshit, like realize like, holy shit, I'm actually gonna go home. And I felt like I was going home because I wasn't on the yard, so I couldn't do something stupid to cough stuff from going home. So I sat there my last 11 months. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I put on 90 pounds in 11 months. I got out of prison weighing 264 pounds, but no plans of what to do, you know? No, I had done zero programming, zero education. I had done nothing but get institutionalized and get involved in the politics and become a 10 times bigger drug addict than I was when I went in there. And remember, I was an 18-year-old kid, so I'd never been to a bar and drank. I'd never been on a date in my life. I was like, not only that, after that sexual assault thing happened, like I was scared to touch women almost, you know what I'm saying? So like I didn't even care about women. Like I just wanted to go steal and do drugs. That was it. And I hated my life. So I had sex with this cop more times than I've had sex with any other woman combined in my life. I'd probably had sex less than 20 times by the time I was 30 years old in my entire life. Not 20 women, 20 times. So what do? I'm going to Sandbar every night. Going home, I would literally take a chick home in the afternoon, go back to the bar, then go home with another girl that night, you know, and I did that for like 6 months. And this one Friday I was at Hobnob, right up the road from here.
Yeah.
And it was a buddy's birthday party. And the last thing I remember was doing a shot of Rumplemans. And one thing about me is I never drove drunk. This time I did, and I didn't even know what happened. I had to go look through my phone back to find out what happened. And I remember doing the shot of Rumplemans. It was still daytime because I remember the sun was out. And then I wake up in an ambulance. And I'm like, I remember telling the paramedics, like, I thought I got in a fight or something at the bar, you know? But like literally not to be funny about it. I was like, if I get in a fight, like the other guy should be here, not me, you know? And like my hands are fine. So I'd like barely conscious tell her, like, paramedic, what the hell am I doing here, you know? And he's like, you overdose. I was like, I don't even use drugs anymore. He's like, you did today. And right then I was just like, dude, I'm done with life, man. Like, why couldn't I have just died and been done? Like, I was so over fighting this drug addict disease. I was done suffering. I was just done with everything. And if I could have chosen to be dead right then, I would have taken it 100 out of 100 times. And then I was like, barely, I don't remember anything else from the ride there. And then next thing you know, I remember like kind of waking up in the hospital bed, and I'm hearing my little brother in the hallway who's on the phone with my dad, who's Mr. AA. And of course, now I'm this 30-year-old prison shot caller. And I remember yelling at my brother, like, why were you telling Dad? And he's like, do you even know what happened? I was like, I don't know anything. They told me I overdosed. And the doctor comes in, and they found me dead with no heartbeat, and had to get my heart back beating, gave me 7 shots of Narcan. And he said he had 7 people that had came in that year in my shape, and none of them had lived. He said, you're the only one that survived. My heart was only beating 6 beats a minute when I got to the hospital. He's like, so whoever you pray to, I keep praying to them. I'm like, I don't believe in nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't pray to nobody. There's whatever. And I'm like, fuck, what did I do this time, you know? And this was God talking to me, but I didn't believe in God back then, you know? And I remember just laying in the hospital bed thinking, like, do you want to still drink and party and stuff and like pull chicks, or do you want to like try and have a shot at life, you know? Because like it's like life or death, like they say in AA, like that's what it was. That was my like life or death moment, you know? And I had to humble myself enough to be like, okay, I'm going to just do the damn thing, you know? Like, stop fighting my dad on this AA thing, because my dad is, I think, 27 years sober or something. And his last drink was the night I got sentenced to 12 years in prison. He went and just got a bottle of wine and blacked out in a hotel room. But before, he had like 10 years sober. So I threw that away from my dad. And I remember telling him, okay, I'm going to just go out to stay with him in South Dakota, go to a meeting or 2 a day, and just try and figure out how to be sober and like be okay being bored and having a boring life. But at least I'm sober and I'm free, you know? And luckily, Chad Seymour, who's my co-defendant, he was the finance director at Marquis, which is a big car dealership in Scottsdale. And I think I racked up 30 days sober or something. And this is my story. It's the come-up story of all time, like I say, because like I had nothing, you know, like my dad went and bought me buy one, get one 50%, 5 dress khakis and dress shirts from Kohl's, buy one, get one 50% off. And he's like, you can pay me back with your first paycheck. And I went out here with nothing, staying at the room in my brother's house, and got hired selling cars and made 10 grand my first month ever working. And then 13 months later, I'm a finance manager there. I bought a brand new Raptor off the showroom floor at Chapman Ford when I was still on parole. I had a $1,200 car payment, like literally a year and a half out of prison, and was making 300 plus grand a year, bro. And I switched my drug addiction to a money addiction. Yeah. And money's cool until don't matter, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I thought that money would always make me happy because I grew up without money. So like I bought, 12 cars and lived in $1 million house at this point now. And I couldn't even rent an apartment. I tried to pay 6 months, like I'll pay all the rent up front cash, but no one would rent me an apartment. And I was like, well, I've been here long enough, I can buy a house. I bought a custom house 3.5 years out of prison, and then sold that one, and then bought a $1 million big ass crib, and literally 4.5 years out of prison. So the old post I had on my Instagram was like from a 5x7 to a 5-car garage in under 5 years. And I let money rule my life, and bought every cool, stupid thing you could do, waste money on, and I never felt so empty, And like I said, the money's cool once you get it, but then after you've had it for a while and you bought all this stuff, like where do you get excitement from, Especially if that's all that you do is let money rule your life, which I did, And then in that time, I was working in the dealership now. I'd been in finance for probably 7 or 8 years now. My own office, just chilling, And one of these Vice TV producers reaches out to me and she asked if I want to be on a TV show. And I was like, about what? So I don't know if you know, but I was a teenage felon by Vice TV.
No.
Yeah, so season 2, the episode 5, the shot caller episode, is my whole life story on Vice TV. And I still don't believe in God, but I have probably 7 years sober now or something, and doing meetings before work and shit like that, just doing it, And I decided I did a lot of help with people in recovery, but I worked so much I just knew I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It served its purpose, but I didn't know what to do. It's the only job I'd ever worked. And I was like, I'm going to try and take this little shot of fame and run with this thing. Once this TV show comes out, I'm going to sell my house. By that time I had owed $460 on it. It was worth $1 million. So I was like, I'm going to sell my house, take that money and just go figure life out and try and make something out of this. You know, I just want to help people, you know? And so I called my GM in there and I was like, yo, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm quitting. He's like, what do you mean you're quitting? I ran the best numbers out of all 3 dealerships they had too. I was the best finance guy. And he's like a lot of guys in the car was like, wait 20 years to get that job, you know? And I was just like, I don't know what to say. He's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, honestly, I don't even know. I was like, I'm going to sell my house and just try and figure it out, you know? Like, no matter what, I could live off that for a few years. And I was like, I'm a hustler. I know I'll figure some shit out now. You know, now that I know how to at least make money, I have a little confidence with that. And I'm like, if worst case scenario, I know his policy was, if you go try it, you can always come back, but you have to work your way back up from selling cars. And I said, I know your rule, man. I said, if it doesn't work, I have no problem coming back here and selling cars and working my way back up, you know? And he's like, Josh Spencer, the GM at Marquez, is the nicest guy on earth, man. We talked for 30 minutes and cried. And he's like, I just want the best for you. He's like, if it doesn't work out, he's like, you don't have to wait and go sell cars. He's like, you can have your office back. And so then I had nothing to worry about. Like, why not take a shot, you know? And in that time, it's such a God thing. I could go on for days about this. I don't want to talk for too much, but like, I happened to see one of my other friends that I've known, like, she showed that she was at this podcast that her husband owned, and I'm friends with her husband. And to this day, it's the only time I've ever seen her post that she was at his podcast studio. So I was like, dude, I would love to do a podcast. I never even thought about that though, you know? And I go meet with them, and they produced my podcast for the first like year and a half, and then it just kind of blew up like overnight, bro. Like my first podcast I released got like 20,000 YouTube views. It was an hour and a half long, and I interviewed my parents, you know? And just God kept just putting stuff in my way, and I'm still not believing in God, bro. And so then I launched the podcast. Once the Vice show drops, launched the podcast. I also wrote a book, Against All Odds, which became a best-selling book in 2 months. And then me and my wife, wasn't my wife at this time, and it was like, that was clearly a God thing too, because we got pregnant on the first date. It was the only pregnancy scare I've ever had in my life, and that's when I made my son Quincy. And I just sold my house and was moving up to the Billboard. So my thought there was I'm going to go stay at the Optima for a year. I was like, I'll get all these people on my podcast. It'll pay for itself. You know, I'm going to just figure out what I want to do next. And we get pregnant right away and had to like really grow up overnight. And like I owe her all the credit in the world, because like I didn't really know how much I had to grow up until you meet a strong woman like that. You know what I'm saying? And her family is like, and not to talk bad about my family, but I didn't like realize how different I grew up until you meet a family like them. You know, like they're from like the movies, bro. Like I remember thinking like, you guys are like the families I used to watch on TNT on the weekends when I was locked in my prison cell. You know, like the nicest people on the face of the earth. Like would do anything for each other. Like they don't fight and bicker. Like it's crazy. You know, like, and then because when you grow up, you only know how you grew up. You know, the only thing that was different, like my child before that, like we didn't have money, but like I had a great childhood up until, you know, my parents split and stuff. And then, you know, when you're with a woman that don't, and what was bad on me before that is like every chick I was with, I treated them like my prison youngsters. You know what I'm saying? Like it's my rules. You can come in here and cook and do my laundry and shit like that. And if you don't like it, bye, you know? And that wouldn't have flied with my chick for 1 second, you know? And so I had to like grow up overnight. And then this is what we talked about before that I'll be honest about, that no one knows this, you know? And so in this time now, I'd done so much bad stuff in prison, you know, like I would still hear like dudes screaming from stabbings and stuff like that, and have nightmares and stuff from it, you know, and I still can hear that last one because I heard that dude gargling and stuff, you know. And so then I started smoking weed at night, you know, and I talked to my sponsor about it even too. I asked him what he thought, because this is back when like they just done the medical cards. So he's like, I can't say anything if you have a prescription for it. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna go get a prescription for it, you know, of course, like anybody does, you know. And I knew it was just wrong the whole time though, you know. And the fact that I was doing that, then I stopped going to meetings, but I knew I was still making money, so I was still successful, you know. And I'm Instagram famous now at this point, so I thought that was cool, you know. And I never like to say it was a bad couple years, because like I have my sons and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. But like I felt so just like incomplete inside, and I knew I was doing the wrong shit. I'm like look what I'm doing with my kids, you know what I'm saying? They're gonna grow up, and you know, like I used to judge my dad, look what I'm doing, you know, I'm no different. And then one night we're going to Post Malone concert, and now I'm not going to meetings anymore. I smoke weed at night. So like, am I sober? Technically, but technically not. And I wanted to just drink with my wife on date night. And I thought I was normal, and I thought I had this disease beat. I seriously did. And I had almost 10 years sober at this time, technically. And of course, my wife's completely normal, so I can convince her. I'm like, dude, I haven't drank in 10 years, you know, I'm totally good now, especially if it's just me and you on date night. We're just gonna drink on date nights, you know, but that way, at least this way we can have fun. And you know, I did it because I felt bad. I was like, she doesn't deserve to live a boring life. She should still be able to drink and have fun with her husband, you know. And like I use that as an excuse as well too. But I justified in my head, and I thought that was right, you know. And we go to the Post Malone concert that night. We had like sweet tickets and have a few drinks. I don't blow up the world. Everything's fine. And the next morning I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I want to kill myself. Like literally, I've never been more suicidal in my life. And I swear to God, if I didn't have kids, I would have smoked myself, bro. Like no joke. And then I felt trapped because I'm like, now I have kids, I have to grow up, but I want to kill myself. And now I can't ever kill myself because I have kids, but I just want to die. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So then what do? Try and go on way more dates than I used to do before. And I drink a lot more. And I did that for, I don't even know, probably 5 or 6 months. And then just like they say, you know, like, and then after a date night, you wake up and she's not talking to him. Like, oh God, I got drunk as hell and said some stupid shit. You know, it's just like the same shit. You know that's gonna happen. And then she kind of gives me an ultimatum. You know, while she's pregnant too, she's like, you need to go get treatment. I'm like, treatment? I don't need no damn treatment. Like, look how successful I am. You know, and I've never been to rehab in my life. And then I'm like, what are you like? You know, I have $15,000 in bills just to break even a month. You know. And I'm like, what are you gonna do about these bills? She's like, I was like, we won't have a house. She's like, you won't have a wife if you don't go get treatment. And I'm like, what? You know, I'm like, chick's gonna leave me, you know? And that was my ego back then, you know? And what's crazy, and I remember she convinced me, you know, and I don't know if you know Megan Racer.
Yeah.
I interviewed her on my podcast, and hers was the second, blew up over. Hers is the only one that has almost as many views as my first one with my parents. And for some reason, it was that Sunday I call her, and I was like, yo, I don't know what to say, but I slipped up, and I need to go into rehab. And she dropped everything she was doing and helped me and got me to detox that night. And then I don't remember, I was in detox for I think 6 or 8 days or something. I don't even remember because they put you on so much shit in there. Yeah. And all I remember is that I was supposed to go to 7 Arrows. And then they sent me to Cinta State. And I remember I'm there, and I'm like, what am I doing here with these guys, you know? And best thing that ever happened to me, you know? And I wanted to just go get help for my trauma. And I was like, I'm not doing AA shit because, like, fuck these old guys, me, you know? And I did that. And here's one thing I'll say, too, is and I fully believe this, if I didn't get that trauma help, I would have always relapsed. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter if I stayed sober for 5, 10 years, a day, or a week, it would have always came up eventually. Like, so people that have, like, severe trauma, they got to get help with that stuff. And I did that rapid eye movement ART therapy, and it was the most life-changing experience of my entire life. It was so crazy. Like, I'll give you an analogy. I did 12 years in prison, bro. And I'm like, the whole time when I'm drinking like this, I'm like, God, what would I give to just go to rehab for a month? It would be a vacation, you know. I'm like, I don't even know, like raising little kids, you're not sleeping all, like it's just a grind all day, 24/7, you know. And then I'm there, and I'm like, my son's almost 2, so he can't talk yet, but he knows like he wants to say he misses his dad and wants his daddy home, and he's acting a fool. And I'm like, telling my wife every day, I'm like, yo, I'm coming home. Like, I'm not, especially because I'm not held against my own will. I'm choosing to be there. And up in Cave Creek, I'm an hour and 20 minutes from my house. I can go home any day, you know. And she just kept telling me, don't come home or we're done. Don't come home or we're done, you know. She's like, you need this. She's like, I'll figure it out. And her mom's a saint. Her mom moved in to my house to live with her for a month and just help take care of the kids while she was pregnant. And then I go there, right? And I went there just to do this ART therapy because I had done reading about it. And this is like the pity me shit. So I'm there, and of course, I'm there for like a week or 2. And every day I'm like wanting to leave. And I'm like, when am I getting this ART therapy? You know what I'm saying? Like, who me? You know what I'm saying? And of course, the main doctor was like, sorry, but the lady that does it, like she's like the best lady in the state. Her name's Jen. She just had like hip surgery. So she's out of the office for like a month or so. And I'm like, that's my luck. I'll be the one person that can't get that stuff that I came here for. And I go that day to think, and I'm like, well, you need to figure something out, because if I'm not getting ART therapy, I'm not going to be here. You know, like, I'm going home tomorrow. And I was so psycho, bro. I used to wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and there was a 2-acre driveway, and I would walk 10, 12, 15 miles a day just pacing like prison laps, bro, like all day long, just pacing. And I remember the next morning, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, bawling my eyes out. I'd wake up with tears in my eyes before I even woke up. And this was my God moment. And the guy that built that place, he built it because his brother died. And he said since he couldn't save his brother's life, he wanted to save other people. So there's a bench out there in the front that has his brother's name on it. And I went there, still pitch black outside. And first time in my life, I like got on my knees in these rocks and hurt the shit out of my knees and was like crying. I'm like, God, if you're real, please like help me. Like, first time I had to humble myself enough to say, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, I need help. And that day was probably one of the most magical days of my life, besides my kids being born. And what's crazy, I wasn't listening. I was listening to like gangster rap music, but I was just listening like happy music, you know. And after I get done praying, I'd go start my little walk, and I would put on like my Apple playlist, and it only plays like music that you've been listening to. And the reason I like completely gave up on God is because my cousin that was an All-American runner at Duke died when I was in maximum security. I found out watching the news, and the same day I watched a rapist get stabbed, and I remember him walking out of there, and my cousin was like killed, closed casket funeral by a drunk driver right after she'd won the P.F. Chang's marathon. And my thoughts that day was, there's no chance God's will. If he let this rapist walk out of here, my cousin was killed, closed casket funeral. And that song by the band Perry, If I Die Young, came out that time, and I would just listen to that on repeat, just cry my eyes out, and that's 5x7 sell by myself all day long. And the second I get done with that band Perry song, If I Die Young, comes on, and I'm like, no fucking way. And then I was so angry, bro. Like, I had even my best friend before, like, we're talking to him over, I don't even know what happened. I probably tried to fight him or something. And we had this old Tupac song that was like our jam that we'd like listen to. We were going and doing our shit, you know, and the next song that comes on is that Tupac song. There's no way this is real. And by this time, it's still dark. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. I listen to that back to back. I'm like, that's God telling me to say sorry to him, you know? I was so mad. I literally had to look at his phone number, delete his phone number, and block him. I didn't even have his number. So what do I do then? I call my sponsor. And it's 6:30 now. And I just want to tell Roger the experience that I just had with that Sally song. It's like, because he knows about it. And he's like, did this just happen? I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, well, I want you to know. He's like, me and all the AA guys went out to breakfast before the meeting this morning. And he goes, for some reason, someone told me that we all said a prayer for you before the meeting. He didn't even know I was in treatment. And I'm like, you're joking. And he's like, so you're saying this just happened? I was like, 5 minutes ago, and I was still crying my eyes out. He's like, you still think God's not real? That same afternoon, the head doctor comes to me too, and she's like, I got some good news for you. She's like, we've never done this before, but she goes, we're going to transport you and have a driver come take you to Jen's house to go get this ART therapy. She's like, we all agree that you have some of the worst trauma we've ever seen, and flat out said that it's above their pay grades, and because you can get like different levels of certification. And she's like, I don't even want to mess with this. None of the people here want to mess with it. She's like, Jen's the best. You need to go see Jen. So we're gonna have a driver take you to go see her tomorrow. I'm like, no way. So then I go up there, and I remember they had a driver take me there, and we go up, and the driver has to go up to see how long he needs to wait in the parking lot. And she says, well, because luckily she had a cancellation. And then she goes, and she says she never gets cancellation. She's booked like 4 months out, right? So she goes up there and she goes, I would normally say an hour, but she goes, this might be your lucky day because I had another cancellation back to back. So she goes, we have 2 hours if we need to. She goes, I would say probably an hour and a half. And I told her verbatim, I was like, we're going to need the whole 2 hours if we have 2 hours, trust me. And it was from 3 o'clock. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I don't know if anyone's like experienced that ART therapy, but it is the craziest experience of my life. Like I just started watching. Have you ever seen The Chosen? So I'm just now all in this God stuff. So I start watching The Chosen and everything, you know. And my wife like knows the Bible like the back of her hand, you know. But I was just like, I thought people that read the Bible were kind of weird before, honestly. And I try to be the exact opposite now, you know. And so I'm watching The Chosen, and I just got to the episode where Jesus makes an appearance. So now I can like put a face to what Jesus looks like. And when you do the ART therapy, and I was always like a cocky dude with an ego, you know. And if anybody that knew me, they would say that if I had one big problem, it was my ego, you know. But I didn't know it was masking how I really felt about myself. So when you go in there, she has this whole sheet of paper, and it says like, she tells me like, I want you to say anything that reminds you of yourself. And it's all bad talk, like insecure, worthless, helpless. And I'm like, oh my God, everything on that list. And right then it was God like opening my eyes to seeing the real me, you know. And I was like, holy shit, this is how I feel about myself. And I was like, and right then I was like, no wonder I have an ego. I'm masking how I really felt, you know. And then so they use the analogy, you go through your life like it's a board game, right? And every turn is another traumatic event that you went through. And and then she goes, we're going to take your old self, your current self, and your future self, and they're going to go with you to walk you through this. And I was so screwed up in the head. I'm like, what if I can't even see a future self that's not this way? You know, I was like, do you mind if I take Jesus from The Chosen and my son with me? She's like, yeah, you can take whatever you want. And they also tell you before you go and find out if anything happened before you're 10 years old, because like if you're in the NICU or something like that, that can cause abandonment issues because you're supposed to be held by your mother right away. I didn't know that I was in the NICU for 14 days and I almost didn't survive when I was born. So my mom tells you that. And bro, like, I shit you not. I remember doing this thing. And I have no imagination. I'm like, there's no way this is gonna work. I thought they were gonna hook my brain up to stuff and like just fix me, you know? When I found out it's just rapid eye movement and she's gonna talk to you, I was like, there's no way this shit works, you know? And before we go, she's like, do you feel anything in your arms? And she like called out, but like my right arm just starts shaking, you know? She's like, just shake it out real quick. And then I'm like, this is weird, you know? And we do it, and I could see, it was like I was watching myself in a movie. That's how real it was, bro. I saw myself, and the sun looked across between me and my son, Quincy, in the NICU. I was literally sitting there holding Quincy with Jesus, and Jesus was telling me that I was there, so it was going to prepare me for the years I was going to spend in solitary confinement years later. And then I saw him standing outside my cell, and the walls were just maximum security, when I used to want to kill myself, but I couldn't because I'm claustrophobic too. And he was literally, no joke, like talking to me from Henry 17. I remember exactly where my cell was. And he was like telling me that I was suffering there so I could use that story to help people when I get out. And I went through every part of it 3 times like that. And I was able to even see my cousin that saved her from a more horrible death. At least she didn't die from pain, you know? She didn't feel anything. And then it's all done. I'm like, I'm in a trance. And I'm like, holy shit. I look at my watch. It's 4:59. It took an hour and 59 minutes. It did full 2 hours. She's like, look at this piece of paper. She's like, no, I want you to say what you see on here. And it's all the exact opposite talk. And I'm like, oh my God, like worthy, happy, joyful. And then she tells me, don't talk about this to anybody tonight, because she's like, your brain is kind of like wet concrete. And until you get sleep and you have REM sleep, it hardens your brain. And then it'll literally harden the traumatic experiences with actually at least positive feelings or thoughts from them. And I'm like, at this point, I'll do whatever the hell you say, you know? So I get in the driver's car and I tell them, I was like, I'm not trying to be rude, but I brought headphones with me. I was like, I'm just going to be listening to music back here. And they told me not to talk about my experience, but I was like dying because I was dying to tell my wife what happened. Everyone in the house was like dying to hear. And you listen to country music? What do you think the first song that comes on when I get in that car is? The first time I ever heard it, it's that Graveyard Whistle by Morgan Wallen, where it talks about like ghosts from your past can only hurt you if you let them hurt you. The first song that comes on. And I'm like, what are the effing chances of this, you know? And I'm like, listening to these words and I like look it up and I'm like, I'm ChatGPT in this song. There's no way this song just came on right now. And it's like verbatim what the experience I just went through, you know? And that was a day I'll never, ever, ever will not believe in God again. And I've never felt so free and just so at peace in my entire life, you know? And sat there for another couple weeks, bro, and had to watch my son go trick-or-treating without me, you know? It's the only one I'll ever spend away from my kids. And I used to want to be Instagram famous. Now I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. Like, it just made me a different person one session, bro. It's the most magical experience of my life. And like I told you, I'm going to be real about this now. People don't even know this, but, you know, I have 5 months sober on Tuesday, and I don't even care about doing podcasts anymore, but I'd like you as a human being, bro, and I just want to help people, and I knew, like, this would probably get to some people that are possibly going through the same thoughts, and hopefully we can steer some people away from trying to think they got this disease beat. And I've been rambling, bro, but
I would not stop you, bro. I've been tearing up, not tearing up, back to tearing up.
But now, yeah, and now I get to, you know, coming full circle, like, you know, like, and I went on the God Behind Bars show out there. They flew me out to Texas, and I did that stuff with these guys in prison now, and it's like, I started a program now where people can get their political prison tattoos removed, and the state pays for them by Lamage Institute up in North Scottsdale. So, like, I used to say white pride across my stomach. Now my wife is half black. My kids are mixed. And me and my son pray at night before bed. And first thing in the morning, I hit my knees and pray with my little son. It's a number one thing. And, like, all I want to do is just try and make sure that my kids, not to talk bad about my family again, obviously, but just grow up nothing like I did. You know what I'm saying? And just get it from the jump. And all I care about now is just being the best parent, best husband I can do, and putting God first in anything I do.
I mean, it's literally incredible because so much of your story is me, and so much of your story that I feel like could happen to me.
Yeah.
If you removed the prison thing, everything else is
For sure.
Dad, meth addict, you know, writing our initials on everything in permanent marker, up in the garage all night, tweaking, had no idea. But to me, he's the best dad in the world because he's showing up at my games.
Yeah.
I don't know any different. And then mom comes along and everything falls apart. Was spared from prison, but ended up in all the trouble.
Yeah.
Ruined baseball, ruined all of these things that could have been.
Another crazy God thing about it. Sorry, one more thing, but like, it's so crazy how much I just see God in everything now too. And it's like, so when I went in there, me and my dad hadn't spoken years. Me and my little brother, who were best friends, hadn't spoken years. And me and my dad hadn't spoken probably 2 or 3 years. And he has 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and they're all drunk ass losers. I have zero problem talking about them. And the night before, my dad's actually coming down to visit me. And I didn't even want him to, but I wasn't going to say no when he had asked my mom. He's like, you ask Pete if I can go see him, you know? And I was just like, and I even, no joke, I warned the counselors there. I was like, yo, be on guard because there's a chance this could get in a blow up in 1 second. You know, we're kind of both hard headed. And that's how it was. And then that night, his brother messaged me at like 10 o'clock at night on Instagram Messenger, like, Peter, you're such a loser, with like 3 O's. And me being the person I'm like, get up from watching TV in the house. And I'm like, you fuck, I will kill you. Like, just go ballistic on him, right? And then the next day, my dad's coming. And that was God showing me, like, that should have been my dad when my dad got sober, you know? He's the only one to pull himself out of that shit. And that's when I told you I was able to finally give my dad credit for what he did instead of being mad that I didn't grow up like my rich friends grew up, you know? And still, when he came up to see me that day, the second he gets out of the truck, and I hadn't seen him for years, he just had a reconstructive knee surgery, but he could barely get out of the truck. And right then, God told me, like, your dad's getting old, like, be around for too long, you know, like, let your ego go and, like, fucking forgive him. Like, he did everything he possibly could have, you know? And he was raised horrible. I can't even imagine how he was raised, you know? And his brothers are, like, I'm small for my family. His brothers are huge, and he always felt like the run. You know, we were able to have talks about things that I never knew about before. That's when he told me, like, how he even got sober. Because I'm, like, thinking, like, how did you even get sober, you know? Like, that was the first time in my life I told my dad I was at that rehab visit, you know? And God let me see that, you know, because the old me wouldn't even let God in my life, so I couldn't see that shit, you know what I'm saying? So if you're, like, fighting the God stuff, you're not going to show the miracles that he's doing for you, you know? I was too bad, like, trying to feed my ego and just being like, God don't give a shit about me. If he did, this wouldn't happen to me, you know? And the second I started, like, opening my eyes to it, like, you just see him all day long, you know? Like, even now when, like, something bad happens to me, I'm like, there's a lesson in there. And not to sound cliche, but that's seriously how I live my life on a daily basis, you know what I'm saying? Like, if something upsets me or puts me off, like, there's a lesson. I'll probably see it. It could be 20 seconds later, I'm like, God, I can't believe the old me would have been so psycho about that before I even, like, saw what was happening, you know what I'm saying? And I just try to be like a compassionate, just like peaceful, and just happy person now, and just try to put God first and just be like a blessing on this earth now for the first time in my life, bro.
You are, and you have been. I mean, you were doing that with the podcast previously.
Yeah.
I think just from your story, God obviously gave you your wife and your love for your wife and your love for your kids, because that was the first entry to finding God?
For
Because you
sure.
wouldn't have gone to treatment
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the wife's ultimatum.
100%. No, not a million years. Yeah, for sure. And she's the only woman I've ever respected enough to like take an ultimatum. You know what I'm saying? I've never had no chick give me an ultimatum. And I was like, okay, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, now I have like the biggest podcast in the entire prison system in every single state, and I had over $1 million just in prisons last year. Like you go to there's a podcast section in there, and literally you go to the podcast section, Roll Call with Chappie is the first podcast you see.
And I even see, when we went up to Utah, you help other guys with their books or get jobs or do all of that. Talk about some of that, because giving people that hope, right, in prison.
What it is a lot of it is, bro, it's just like, and that, like when I gave my dad credit for like getting sober when no one else did it, like I was one of the first dudes to come out of prison, especially like with a crazy gangster prison story, and like make something of themselves, So like I had to figure it out by myself, and like now, but I'm like, and that's why I tell the guys when they get out now, I'm like, bro, like it was so much harder for me to do this. Now, like I've literally laid the groundwork and the footwork to show you how to do this. You know what I'm saying? Stay sober, go to meetings, and ask me questions. You know what I'm saying? Just like humble yourself. Like you got to lose that prison ego the second you get out, or if not, you're going back to prison. Like there's no joy I find more than like helping dudes that did a bunch of prison time or something like that, and then like become sober. And like the dude that I helped at the dealership, like no joke, listen to my podcast at prison in California. Don't even know this guy. Shot me an Instagram message on Messenger yesterday. Took a train out here from California because he wanted to buy a car for me and just wanted to meet me in person because he heard my podcast. And driving a car home tomorrow and just wanted to meet me and shake my hand and stuff like that and just thank me for getting him through prison. Took a train.
And now think of all the people that you're going to help find God.
Yep, for sure. And that's what's crazy too, because it's crazy. I haven't uploaded a lot of my episodes recently. And I still get messages like people say that like your podcast saved my life. Like I hope one day you find God. And I'm like, dude, that's the number one thing. Now it's like I can be the opposite, because when you couldn't bring up God to me, now I can be a light for all those people that say they would never ever believe in God. Now I'm like, bro, I said the exact same thing, and like you gotta find him. You know what I'm saying? And once you do, everything will make sense. And that's the number one thing goal I have now is just to bring people to believe in Jesus Christ and God.
Dude, it's so inspiring. I don't even want to take up any more of your time. I don't want to take anything from this. If you can just give people some advice out there. Like I said, I see myself in you, and I see the mistakes that I could easily make. Like we were talking before this, it's like it's very easy to normalize or to see success and now start hanging out with successful people and to really forget where we came from. And we're one night away. We're one justification.
2 second decision away, because kratom's at gas stations now. You know what I'm saying? Like you're literally 2 seconds away. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'd say. Like if you're going through a tough times don't last. As cliche as that sounds, that's the truth. And as long as you like humble yourself and just like know that there's a purpose there. Like one other rule I have myself is like I don't make any rash decisions until I've paused before. Like anything that like makes my heart elevated, I wait till my heart's elevated before like you send a text or like make a decision or do something like that, because like usually the shit, just like a smoking urge or something like that, it wears off in 20 seconds. You know what I'm saying? And like the old me would have I wouldn't have given it 1 second. I'm like, I used to look for reasons to go like be mad and get high. You know what I'm saying? And like we're strong people, and addicts. I tell these guys, dude, all my sales guys at the dealership, like the best ones are the guys that have passed and have been through some shit. The weakest salespeople are the people that have never been through shit, And once you can like use your addiction disease as a superpower rather than a crutch in your life, like you have one up on every other person in the world. Like the best sales guys are the guys that have been through some shit, because there's people that haven't been through shit. Like they'll get someone that'll like stroke them all day long and not buy a car, and they don't sell a car, and they're just like moping around, and they'll let it ruin their whole week. And like guys that have had their backs on the wall, like on to the next one, and then they go sell another car, and then they make money. You know what I'm saying? And like, but I don't ever want to preach like money makes you happy, but you need money to be successful. And like now I just want to make the most money so I can just like spend the most time with my kids and help the most amount of people. You know what I'm saying? I've never cared about money less in my entire life. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I just find God, bro, and just like pause and reach out, because someone has the answer. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to do this alone.
And work through your trauma.
100%. No doubt about it. Work through trauma. There's a lot of people that like haven't been to prison that are like carrying traumatic stuff around. They have crazy treatments now, bro, that can get help, and they can literally fix you overnight. It is insane what like real trauma help can do.
I really appreciate you being on here. Where can they find you?
Instagram, Peter_Meyerhoff. Roll Call with Chappie on all podcast platforms, and then my book Against All Odds is on Amazon.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. Got you, Hopeaholics. You came on here first.
I will come on that show. We were talking about that. I was like, I was going through this stuff when I flaked on coming to that show, but I will come out to them. But this is all the only things I'm doing. Like I used to be doing this stuff to feed my bullshit ego. Now I just want to do the stuff that actually helps people.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.